God, what's better than Pikmin, right? The scenic and tranquil environments, the inspired interpretations of otherworldly flora and fauna, the intense time management coupled with maintaining an entire army of god-awful looking things. It's hard to pinpoint another series that has this level of overall consistency across its titles, to the point where I can't imagine a Pikmin product that in any way failed to please. Well, who the f*** invited this guy?
Louie. Louie. Louie.
You know, I've always been fascinated by the oft-forgotten outings in otherwise popular and well-rated series. Whether audiences left them behind due to poor advertising, being locked behind an unpopular system, being generally disliked on release, or in some cases, all three, I can't help but want to at least give these games a fighting chance. To be the one ushering them into the spotlight and seeing exactly what was being presented in these flops is a role that I think suits me perfectly. Since I also suffer from, quote, lacking mass appeal, at least according to my therapist, and that guy at the checkout line earlier today. Now that everyone's had time to digest with Pikmin 4, I thought it might be a good time to take inventory on the franchise and let some of this newfound publicity sprinkle onto what is by far its least talked about entry. Oh no, no, not that one. Even I'm not gonna talk about that. No, it's Hey Pikmin for the 3DS. We all remember this one, right? It's right, it's right there it is. Poor guy probably feels so forgotten. And I'd be remiss not to spend some time today talking about it. Wait, is remiss the word I'm looking for? Hold on, Oh, sorry. This is what I meant to say. There wasn't the warmest of receptions waiting for Hey Pikmin upon its announcement in 2017. Fans of the series were starving for something by this time. With Pikmin 3 released 4 years prior, the wait was pressing harder for the long-awaited sequel, something that was assured by Miyamoto himself to be on its way very soon. If by soon, he meant 8 years after making that statement. What the hell happened there? What, did they just lose everything and have to start over? I know Metroid fans aren't laughing at that one. The lukewarm to negative reactions towards the announcement of this handheld spin-off make sense in context. It does come off as a bit deflating when waiting for the next mainline title to be delivered something that seemed to be splintered off from the series' core identity altogether. Concerns had grown that this is what Nintendo had been working on for the franchise all this time, and that the promised fourth game was being pushed back indefinitely. Though assuming all of this was a bit of conjecture. The game would actually be developed by the company Arzest instead of Nintendo themselves, so there was still hope that the next mainline title could be right around the corner. Oh, yeah, that's right. The timing couldn't have been worse for people to just straight up not care. The Switch had recently come out, exciting many, and the 3DS was approaching the end of its lifespan, something Nintendo was trying to prolong by shoveling out a ton of spin-offs and remakes onto the thing. Hey Pikmin would be part of this somewhat frantic move to squeeze whatever juice was left out of this eye-strain-inducing clamshell, and as a result became nothing really worth talking about. However, oh, my mistake, that's actually the end of that sentence. But you get the gist, the game came out, was swiftly forgotten, and now here we are years after the fact, uncovering this title like a couple of archaeologists digging up a priceless artifact to see what it's worth. I'm using the term priceless a little loosely here. Maybe it's closer to uncovering a really old stone, something that only nerds would find fascinating, but isn't really that major of a... Okay, let's just look at the game. We'll start with our story, since that shouldn't take too long to recap. There's always been a running gag going that every Pikmin game's plot starts the exact same way, with Captain Olimar crashing his ship onto an alien planet. But you might be surprised to know that they decided to shake things up a bit for our first spin-off title. Yeah, nah, I'm just messing with you. They just do the ship crashing story again. However, this time, Olimar is advised by his talking ship, the SS Dolphin II, that they need to collect a resource called Sparklium to act as a fuel in order to get off the planet they crash-landed on and return home. While exploring for this Sparklium, the captain and his ship discover several Pikmin species actually inhabit this planet, as well as many familiar creatures, big and small, that stand in the way. With the help of the Pikmin, Olimar sets off to gather resources, build up his army, and promptly leave them all behind to fend for themselves once he leaves. It's your standard fare Pikmin story with really no frills, basically just parroting the first game's plot with added emphasis on this one specific collectible rather than recovering lost parts of the ship itself, which were a bit more engaging to collect in my opinion. There's also an implication that the planet this game takes place on isn't the same planet as the other games, and is in fact a completely new place. Can somebody tell me why? It's got the same Pikmin, the same enemy types, and the same references to the presence of humans to the point where it's pretty much indistinguishable. So honestly, this entire plot point could have been removed and absolutely nothing would have been affected. Oh, kinda like the game. Okay, that's enough pot shots. How does it actually play? Well, there's a lot of firsts for the franchise going on here. No longer are we exploring three-dimensional open spaces, we're now taking things a lot more traditionally with a 2D side-scrolling approach. Levels are constructed with a clear beginning and end, foregoing the familiar structure in favor of a stricter focus on puzzle solving and platforming. The Pikmin are handled a lot differently as well, with a lot of the strategy stripped away in this new setup. No longer are players planning what kinds of Pikmin they want to take out on the field, or even fighting against the clock to make enough progress before the day's end. Now the game is broken out into linear levels across 9 sectors of the planet. You're given Pikmin throughout each of these stages that are tailor-made for the challenges being thrown at you, gathering up to 20 of these guys at a time, with extra brownie points being awarded if you're able to clear the course without losing any. This is something that took some getting used to coming off of the other games, and it's not that this change in gameplay is necessarily bad. They did what they could on the more limiting hardware. But a lot of what made these games fresh and original in the first place is completely absent here, and what is being delivered doesn't exactly make up for it. There's 5 different types of Pikmin you can discover, mirroring the third game's selection. The mainstays of red, blue, and yellow, as well as rock and winged, all acting as they did previously with a few tweaks, such as winged Pikmin being able to float Olimar across wide gaps. The AI on these little guys is pretty good, barring a few exceptions. I think my main gripe with them is the fact that there's no clear way to have them stay put, making it feel like a lot of them end up getting killed just by stupidly following you when you would really rather them not. I should correct myself, there is one way to get them to stay still, but it's very unorthodox. With this being more of a platformer, it makes sense to give Olimar a few new tricks to aid his natural movement, one of which being his new jetpack that he can use to raise himself up a short bit and hover. Boy, this would have been nice to have in the actual games. It's a fun idea that I think ended up being a bit squandered. It's just too damn slow and clunky. And while yes, it does act as a way to dismiss your Pikmin group, it shouldn't have to be this obtuse. I would often use my jetpack to grab an overhead collectible without realizing that by doing so, my Pikmin were no longer following me, causing me to have to backtrack to go pick them up. It's just awkward. One thing they didn't mess with is the snappiness of throwing the Pikmin, which is now done by just tapping the screen. This feels really responsive and satisfying, with the speed they're thrown at all depending on how quickly you want to develop early onset arthritis. As I mentioned before, you'll be taking these Pikmin through 8 main sectors, with the 9th being the final boss. Each of these sectors are broken up into 5 levels, with one secret level being accessible through a hidden exit. There's only one of these in each sector, and they're not too difficult to find. You'll know another exit is in the level you just beat when 2 lines come out of it instead of 1 back on the map screen. I was on board with the idea of finding all the secret exits, up until I realized that meant replaying through stages almost entirely until the very end, where the path is splintered into 2. Come on guys, that's not how you do it. I got stuff to do, I can't be playing the stage all over again just to go left instead of right 10 minutes in. It just didn't seem worth the time, and certainly wasn't necessary to reach the goal of 30,000 Sparklium. You'll hit this threshold pretty easily, with the game rewarding you at certain milestones by upgrading things like your health or jetpack hover duration, both of which you can use to help you find these treasures scattered across different levels. There's about 3 or so of these in each stage, and they feel like the closest link to a more recognizable Pikmin experience, being the main incentive behind exploring every crevice of an area. Seeing the normal, everyday objects be given awe-inspired titles was always one of my favorite details about this series, so I'm glad to see it return here, as well as a complete logbook on all of the treasures, Pikmin, and enemies you discover. I don't think a Pikmin experience would be complete without Olimar's studious notes on a bottle cap, so this was cute. Speaking of cute, there's a lot more expressiveness and personality given to the Pikmin here, reminding me of their behavior in those Pikmin short films Nintendo made a few of out of nowhere that one time, and then never again. You're treated to a lot of these mini cutscenes as you traverse through the levels of Pikmin doing their little comical exploits, which I thought were fun little distractions. The first 30 times. I know I'm coming off like I hate fun here, but these are in every single level, sometimes multiple times a level, and you can't skip them. I'm sorry, yes, I get it, they're cute little freaks, but can I please get back to having my middling gameplay experience now? As for the stages themselves, there's some decent variety and experimentation going on. Underwater sections are much more fleshed out, and there's some level-exclusive gimmicks that can be a good time, though some of these overstay their welcome tremendously and feel like a slog to get through. I find it somewhat comparable to the Yoshi series of games in setup, with each stage trying something new and seeing what sticks. Which makes sense considering the developer also worked on Yoshi's New Island, another 3DS game that failed to make much of a lasting impression. Though it wasn't too bad, I think. They brought everything it needed to the table, and I kinda like the pastel look they gave it. Makes the visuals stand out while keeping the feeling of... Oh, sorry, that's right, I'm supposed to be talking about this game. Guess I forgot. I think that's our biggest overall problem here. Everything is fine, but it's very easily forgotten. Like this Pikmin Park game? I don't really know what to make of this. It's a screen where all of your Pikmin hang out, and you can send them off in selectable areas to mine for more sparklium, with different Pikmin types able to mine from different objects, and that's about it. It's more of an idle side thing that you can check back in on between levels, and that doesn't really amount to anything other than giving you more of that sparklium that you're already collecting a ton of in the main stages. And if not there, then within these little bonus rooms in each sector. These are fun, bite-sized minigames that I think fulfill their purpose well, and provide a decent challenge in trying to collect all of the falling sparklium before time runs out. Though I am left wanting a bit more from these mini challenge areas you can also find on the map. These are single-screen obstacle courses that award you pellets that grant you even more Pikmin to have in the park, but they're so simple even by endgame it borders on being a joke. They're way too razor-thin, where I feel like they could have been great opportunities to really push the puzzle-solving aspect, providing short, fun brain teasers for those who want to put in a bit more thought. As they stand, they're so uninteresting that I can't even be bothered to finish talking. Whatever. I must say I do enjoy the look of this game, utilizing both screens in a pretty cohesive setup, something that I wish more 3DS games had tried out, because it allows for some fun and unique perspectives by switching between the dual screens interchangeably. There's some nice polish to the presentation here that, while it isn't the prettiest on the system, goes a long way to sell the overall charm, especially the little things, like getting to watch Olimar completely ignore his ship's warnings that a boss is coming up so he can work on his calisthenics. The bosses, by the way, are, you guessed it, nothing special. They each only have one pattern of attacks before going down that takes no time at all to understand. I was honestly a bit more engaged by the regular stage enemies, though more than enough times throughout playing I had to call bullshit. I swear, if you're tapping even just a pixel off on one of these bread bugs, you don't get a chance to save that Pikmin. They're straight up instantly dead. And some of the sections of the game feel like beginner's traps with what little warnings they give you on anything. This got to be really annoying, especially when you're trying to get all 20 Pikmin through the stage and you've almost made it, just to get a cheap shot thrown at you right at the very end, making you lose a chunk of your squad all at once. It doesn't feel like I'm courageously leading my Pikmin into battle so much as I'm nervously huddling them close, hoping that nothing decides to just fall on top of all of them before I can react. The game itself is beatable in about 8 to 9 hours, if you don't try to go for everything. I decided to play pretty casually, getting as much as I was willing to, and still collected 30,000 sparklium before getting to the last area. After salvaging a missing ship part from the final boss, Olimar takes off back to his home planet and the credits roll, wrapping up Hey Pikmin's story and leaving me with an overall feeling of I don't know, kinda hungry? It's hard to come to this game's defense without defaulting to just saying what it's not. It's not terrible, it's not the worst game ever, it's not unplayable by any means, but when trying to pinpoint what it is, I walk away feeling a bit perplexed. If you strip a Pikmin game of its core structure, how will you achieve that same iconic feeling of perilous exploration? Or of micromanaging your Pikmin to get the best results in the quickest amount of time? Well, according to Hey Pikmin, you don't. Or at least you don't achieve it consistently. I can see the potential of a really solid puzzle platformer here. One that, if it had a little more time to cook, could have really turned some heads. It feels like every time a stage gimmick or idea really starts to get going, well, would you look at that, the level's over. I don't think at any point I really felt like I was playing a Pikmin game, which, hey, it's a handheld spin-off. You're not going to get the same quality. But there should be something provided here that helps make this feel like it at least fits under the umbrella of Pikmin, and I'm struggling to find what would incite that feeling within the title that I played. It's starting to become clear why this one's rarely talked about anymore. What else is there to say? It's just okay. To really capture an audience with a fresh, inspired idea is a special thing. It's the end goal of many a young startup developer trying to get their name out there in an unforgiving industry. I'll always have respect for Nintendo for constantly looking at what the competition is doing and completely turning it on its head, standing out generation after generation with a remarkably impressive track record, one where even their failures can provide something to at least build off of. Pikmin was a result of one of these experimental shots in the dark, becoming a series that doesn't quite fit the mold of anything that's come before, or since. You can't squeeze this style of gameplay into something it's not, and what it's not is forgettable. There's nothing wrong with playing around with what worked before. That's how you keep the needle moving on progress. But if it's to truly be considered a step forward, it has to build on what made this series so unforgettable in the first place, not take away. Because if you do take away, you risk becoming the very thing that these games were made to counterbalance in the first place. Just another run-of-the-mill platformer. I'm sorry, what the hell game was I even talking about in the start of this? It was on the 3DS. It was... Oh, that's right. I'm sorry, it just keeps slipping my mind. Anyway, though largely forgotten, Yoshi's New Island still manages to be a delight after all these years.